Hello and welcome to the ADHD Skills Lab. This is our research recap episode with the wonderful Will Kerb from Hacking Your ADHD. In each one of these episodes, we will go through a paper, we'll look at some of the practical takeaways, how it's going to affect you with your ADHD, as well as what we liked and what we didn't like about it. So if you've always wondered where some of this research that helps make some of the decisions about your life is coming from, this is what we unpack. This is what we demystify. So come along for the ride.
So, Sky, tell me what you know about TikTok.
Yes, I think this is a good start. So I had TikTok a few years ago, and quite frankly, I didn't love the channels it took me down. It was like, "Oh, you must want more of this," and I was like, "I don't actually. I value my mental health," and I ended up just turning it off. I ended up not using it. Does that mean I don't use shorts? No, I go on Instagram shorts, I go on YouTube shorts. I just have decided TikTok isn't for me. You won't actually find us on TikTok at all. So this was an interesting conversation because I was kind of coming at this from the perspective of somebody who is active on social media shorts, but not necessarily TikTok.
Yeah, I had some channels on there, videos I used to upload. I have not actively used TikTok in years, just because it was something that I felt actively detrimental to my health because it has a very good algorithm at capturing attention.
Yeah.
It was just hard for me to both be on there and then being like, I don't think I should use this. Also, let me make videos for other people so they can be on there. And I'm like, and there's some hard to say what's the right answer there, but the right answer for me was just, I'm not going to do this. Even though right now TikTok is on my phone because I wanted to look some of the old videos up, it hasn't really grabbed me again. I haven't had any trouble dealing with the fact that it's there. I just don't open the app because it's not something that is actively in my head to do, which I find is an interesting thing. Because one of the things I wanted to look at before we go into the studies, okay, how much are people watching TikTok? Like, how many videos are they doing? Because I think that's really relevant to the method they use that we'll talk about in a minute. But average TikTok user watches about 95 minutes of TikTok a day, which is an hour and a half. That's a lot, but it's also not that much for some people. So average, there's power users that are watching way more, and then people that are just watching a couple videos a day. But the average video length is between 20 and 30 seconds. Some of them can be as short as 3 seconds, and apparently in some regions you can now have 30-minute long videos, which seems not
That's YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what YouTube's for. But the bottom line here, I think, is that the average user is going to be seeing hundreds of videos a day, especially if you consider things they're just scrolling by immediately.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And so in terms of this actual paper, it's a very interesting paper. I feel like we're going to have to start with caveats about various things before we get into it. But essentially what they wanted to look at is they were looking at, okay, if social media platforms are being used to disseminate mental health information online, they actually said that the hashtag ADHD was the 7th most popular health-related hashtag on the platform, which is really crazy in some ways because health is such a big space. They wanted to see if what was going on, what was being posted on TikTok was something that was going to be considered to be beneficial, correct information about ADHD. Could you go on TikTok and get the information about ADHD that you actually needed according to this paper? We'll get into that as well.
Yeah. And so what they did is they went, okay, we're going to look at this hashtag ADHD. We're going to look at the 100 most popular videos within that hashtag. And then we are going to assess it on two things: this patient educational materials assessment tool for audiovisual materials, PET or PMAT AV. And it is that basically that's just, can you understand the videos? It's really not about the quality. It's more about, or how good the information is really just about, hey, can you understand what the people are saying? Is it important? And in general, they found almost all the videos were very well done that way. And then there was also the Journal of American Medical Association benchmark criteria, the JAMA, and that is the one that a lot of people had issue with in regards to this study.
Mhm.
I can pull up my thing on JAMA, but do you have anything to say about it?
Just, it's an interesting one because I think as somebody who started out on the internet posting articles that had a lot of references, I understand that, the importance of doing things. I probably still didn't do it according to JAMA because I didn't know about JAMA. And I think that's something that we're going to get into in a minute. But yeah, tell us about what was their expectations?
Yeah, so the JAMA things are looking at authorship, like who are they crediting this for? Is the attribution clear? Can they find that easily? Like, then, the disclosure of, hey, where are you doing stuff to getting paid to say this, any of that kind of stuff. That's incredibly important to have that kind of disclosure, especially with the number of ads that have ADHD information in them,
Mm-hmm.
and then the how current the information is. But I think the most important parts here is the like attribution aspect and who are they attributing this to kind of stuff. That is the big issue that comes up because that's hard to do on social media properly.
Yeah, definitely. And so their expectation was that if you met their criteria, you were essentially coming on, talking about something to do with ADHD that was correct, that was factually correct. You were citing your sources, you were providing references for people to find those sources. And when you looked at the examples that they were using, a large portion of those were also saying, and if you want to like fully understand if you have ADHD, you have to go and get diagnosed by a professional. So all of that was being put into a 30-second clip in order for it to meet the criteria.
Which, no, with that said, there are examples of misleading statements. I was like, yeah, I could.
Ooh,
That is
yes.
the examples of misleading statements. So they had like videos describing ADHD paralysis, which that's its own thing. I don't want to go into
Well, it's a
that
tough one
specific.
because emotional dysregulation in ADHD up until recently was considered something that was not in academic research and therefore you couldn't talk about it. But now it is. And actually, one of the reasons people started talking about it was because people talked about the personal experiences of it on TikTok or places like that.
And yeah, but then they also had videos stating that ADHD is equally common between girls and boys, which research doesn't support that, but that
No.
often is because women are
Mm-hmm.
underdiagnosed. So it's hard. Research doesn't say it, but we don't. And then also that ADHD symptoms only intensify with the onset of puberty. I was surprised that was listed as misinformation. I was felt that was something that was
Yeah, I have seen that in studies. I think the one that, because we're not doing a very good job of examples here, I think the one that really stood out to me as an example was somebody had a video that was like, if you listen to this, it will tell you if you have ADHD. It was like an audio, like that kind of stuff, that just kind of off the wall, wild stuff where it's like
um or
nothing
this
to back that up.
this one I saw the ADHD lacks object permanence, which is that's again where the attribution is wrong here, where people are like, I'm calling this object permanence. That's not what that's called. That's
Yeah.
something babies deal with. Also, apparently that's really bad research as well when I looked into it, but
Mm.
that's not the point of this video. But
Yeah.
yeah, with the out of sight, out of mind is not
Mm-hmm.
object permanence that we forget. Some object permanence
Yeah.
is more about the idea that once something leaves your
Mm-hmm.
field of view, that you don't even know it exists anymore. Not that
Yeah.
it's you don't know where it is and you're not thinking about it. Because I could be like you asked me to put some scissors in a drawer and then I put the scissors in the drawer. At that point, I don't know scissors exist anymore. But if you asked me, hey, where'd you put the things? I'd be like, in the drawer. So it's a different aspect
Yeah.
of it.
It's very different. Yeah. And so there was some things that were, yeah, very much misleading. If you'd been on TikTok and you had said, and some people do, this is going to be my sole source of information about ADHD and symptoms and all that kind of stuff, then that could be quite misleading and it could potentially lead you down a path of thinking you have it when you don't have it, or thinking you don't have it when you do have it, because you're like, well, I don't have object permanence, so, or I
Yep.
do, or something like that.
And so, yeah, so they classified the videos in three different ways. They were or actually, I should say how they just went about it. They had two people watch the videos and classify them as either misleading, personal experience, or as useful. And if the people disagreed, they had a third person come in and decide on which one it was.
Yeah. And so they had really good criteria. Like, one of the cool things about this paper was they had a criteria, they were using it. It was more about the to what end, because they did a few things that were quite interesting. So one was if a personal experience video contained any generalized misleading statements, it was classified as misleading rather than personal experience, which becomes relevant when you find out personal experience is one of the most popular. Like, it was the most useful, which makes sense. It's what a lot of us are interested in. And then in terms of their examples of useful videos, it was really interesting because they had, videos describing auditory processing disorder could be comorbid with ADHD, but a medical or audiological assessment is required for this to be diagnosed, or videos saying that ADHD symptoms of daydreaming, sleep disturbances, and school difficulties could all be symptoms of ADHD. Again, recommendation to see a professional, mental health professional, if the viewer is wondering about ADHD. And this is the kind of language use that you would really only find with healthcare professionals. You're not going to necessarily see that a lot in people who are, say, doing a POV of the day in their life experiencing ADHD symptoms.
Yeah. And that did seem to be one of the things that they were really looking for. They wanted to use this as a launch pad to get more healthcare professionals making these kind of videos so that we could have. And I've seen some, and I don't know, there are some people that are really good at doing it, and there are some people that you're like, this is okay information, but man, you are not doing this for an ADHD audience.
Yeah, definitely. And although when you looked at the difference between the healthcare professionals and the non-healthcare professionals, it wasn't a significant difference in terms of views and likes and shares. One of the great things about having the real data is when you look at the real data, you do see, okay, well, the mean likes were 6,500 and then the other one was like 402,000. So it's like, sorry, I said that wrong. 653,000 for non-healthcare professionals in terms of mean likes versus 402,000 for healthcare professionals in terms of mean likes. So there was a stark difference, and you saw that across the views, across the shares. People just didn't resonate much with healthcare professional information, which makes sense because the way it was being described was very clinical and not necessarily something that was going to be scroll stopping, if you want to talk about that idea.
Yeah. So I do think that's one of the big issues is presentation matters a lot in this kind of thing. And I'll admit, in the last few years, I have seen more healthcare professionals that are switching from primarily being healthcare to going more to the influencer model because they think they can help more people that way.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are very good. Some of them are not good. In fact, even here, like they had, so
some of them were misleading.
Yeah, they had 20% of the healthcare professional videos were misleading. Admittedly, that is a very small. So we have 100 videos, and then only, I think, 11 of them were
11. Yeah, so numerically, we're talking.
Yeah, and then 3 of them were misleading. So that makes it like, oh my God, it's 27%.
It's just 3 people who forgot to cite their source. But I think the conversation of citing your sources is an interesting one because, look, I'll be totally real. We do this, right? We come on, and we do this podcast. Part of the reason is because we're very passionate about helping people find the real research and as much as possible sharing that information with as much knowledge as possible. I don't claim to be an expert on everything. But when it comes to posting that on social media, I have had a bit of a conflict of interest around, do I cite the source? Do I say this is I always say this is based on research, but do I then put the source in the link or not? Because, do people need that, or can they go to the podcast for that information? This is kind of making me want to put my sources back in and be like, hey, I'll take the hit in terms of interest.
Yeah, because I don't want to land on the wrong side of things. But yeah, at the same time, I'm going, is because I guess to go at what their findings were, they found that 52% of videos were misleading, 27% were personal experience, and then only 21% were seen as useful ADHD information. I did not, when I looked at those numbers, I was like, man, I don't know if I feel great about the fact that we're separating useful and personal experience here.
Yeah, I think honestly that was maybe the biggest thing for me, because a lot of what we talk about is our personal experience, the personal experience of, in my case, I work with clients, so clients' experiences. And it's an interesting one because, there's lots of things like some people struggle to get diagnosis. You can't just say, if you want to know this, you should get diagnosed. It's like thousands of dollars and it doesn't even happen in my country for the next 9 months. These things can be problematic. And then when you're talking about what makes it useful, yeah, personal experiences, that's where the conversation about rejection sensitivity comes in. And some of that still isn't in the research, but in some ways the research needs to catch up with what people are saying. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg there as well.
Yeah. And I don't want people to come away from this podcast with them thinking that we're saying there's no misinformation about
This is a
ADHD and
research
social media
episode series.
Yeah.
We are literally looking at academic research. We clearly like this stuff.
Yeah. And because there is tons of misinformation about ADHD in there, especially from popular creators who maybe don't understand the nuance of what's going on. And
Yep.
that's often what a lot of misinformation comes from, is that lack of nuance, where they're like, oh, ADHD is just a dopamine deficit idea, or ADHD is just being over or understimulated. And that might have aspects of it, but you can't. Nuance is such an important part of the conversation.
Yeah. And I think maybe if you were to take away a practical thing from this, it would be that everybody on social media might be misleading you, because even the people who were doing it in an academic context, like, hello, I'm a doctor, this is what I'm saying, this is the references, they still had some misleading information. So I think it's worth doing your own research, maybe using these spaces like TikTok as a jumping off point to go, oh, that's really interesting, I wonder if that's true, rather than going, I just heard that and therefore that is true.
Yeah. Yeah, especially I've seen stuff from someone's like, oh, they got a PhD, and I'm looking at their stuff and I'm like, oh, they have a PhD in education or something, and they're just using that as a way to build their credibility. And not saying that PhD in education is bad. It's just that if you're looking at something psychological, you probably want that kind of degree. Not that. And then I also have to acknowledge that, I don't have any of those fancy numbers or letters behind my name. So I think the citing of sources is really important, because we want to know where people are getting their information so that people can check for themselves. Because I know I'm going to get things wrong, and I don't want that to make people think, oh, he's doing everything wrong. This is why. I'm trying to do my best. And that's what I really hope for most people online.
Yeah, I think that's probably the takeaway. If you are posting things online, try and cite your sources. I have seen some very prominent magazines and journals in ADHD space that do not cite their sources, and I have to say sometimes you go, well, why? I have this and I have this and this is known, and to somebody maybe in the academic space, this is so well known it feels silly to kind of cite the source again. But maybe that's the thing we can all take away from this, is like, hey, go back to citing your sources. You can put it in the comments. It's not going to kill your reach. But in terms of, and then in terms of people who are viewing it, it's going, okay, this is a jumping off point for knowledge. It's not the source of knowledge. Hello! So you were just listening to a research recap. I'm Sky Waterson of Unconventional Organisation. If you like that, there's lots more information about ADHD and support for you at unconventionalorganisation.com. You can go ahead and check that out. Lots of free resources, lots of strategies, and if you want to join our programs, you can do that as well. And we'll see you there, Unconventional Organisation.